So you want to build something like this. In our first video, we talked a lot about tools and what to use and the levels of tools and when to use them and how to blah, 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 whatever, right? In this video, we're gonna talk a lot more about the actual building of the gunpla and the shadows. Keep in mind that when I do the shadows, I have multiple ways of going about it. I use 3 methods in general. The first method that we use is I literally just look at the kit, right? So if I see something like a shadow, where it would naturally form, I could have of course add a shape there. Same thing if it's something that just overlays something, like if something is on top of something else, you could add a shadow there. So like the way these fins are on top, you could always add a shadow right here. But if you do that way, you have to keep the model the way it is. So I go for method number 2 most of the time. So method number 2 is called do whatever the heckin' thing I want. That doesn't mean just add whatever, but I add shadows in where I think they'll be cool. So like with the leg, I did just that, add whatever the heck I want. These shadows don't really make sense, so an artist is probably like really mad at me right now, but they look really cool in the gunpla. Like you can't really tell from far away, and I can model it however I want and it'll look good however I want. And the third method is sometimes I'll look at like what the actual anime has, in terms of like if it was animated or not, and I'll just copy the shadows on there. I'll copy a scene or two. I think that's the most beginner friendly though, because if you look at the anime, you have something to kind of look at. I try not to do that though, because then I learn from experience, but if you need to, you can. All right, so for tonight, I'm gonna be using a paintbrush to get my paint on, but you can use like anything, a pen, another paintbrush, whatever you want, a combination of both. Just be happy with what you're doing, and then if you don't know what I'm talking about, go back to the tool video.
So for today's example, we have the SNA Firelord. I'll be kind of showing my thought process on how to tackle this project in general, where I would add shadows. I'm not going to go too heavy today, but you'll definitely see what I kind of do, and also show some other examples of other kits that I've done. Like any good project, you always want to plan ahead. On the SNA Firelord, it is very top heavy, very masculine looking, so you'll have a lot of shadows right where the waist is, and you'll see me pinpoint a lot of that right now, just like under the lip where I'm about to point to. There's a natural shadow already, so that's something I would look at first, the shadow, and I'm deciding here if I want to go heavy or not. I also pinpoint under the arms, and then also pinpoint some parts of the back later on. But really it's just planning ahead, even in the waist bit there. You don't want really any surprises and stuff as you're planning. I usually do this mentally, but for the sake of the video, I'm pointing these areas out. As some of you may already recognize, we already used method number 1, where we kind of looked over the kit to see where shadows would make sense. Here I am using method number 2, the method I use the most, where I kind of just do what I want. Now, whenever I do what I want, I always want to make sure that my painting is very even, because it's not really going to make sense to an artist, but it needs to make sense on a shelf. So the more even the shadows are, the more you can articulate the kit without having to worry about actual integration of the shadows. Because I went with a paintbrush, I do very light strokes, and I do multiple strokes. This is to make sure all of my paint is evenly across the entire thing, and you'll see here in a bit what it actually looks like at the end. While I wouldn't call this the finished product, here you'll clearly see that after the layers of paint, you definitely have a lot more definition in the shadow. And this is exactly what I was going for. You want to give the area shape. As you can see, that chest bit I did a little bit sharper. On the waist, I added kind of like an S-curve of a shadow. The main point here is you want to be as creative with the shapes, and you want to mold them to the actual body of the kit. Here in this clip, I am sharing my new Gundam in the way it came out, to show the importance of shadow shape, detail, length, and everything. It's very important for you to kind of decide what you want to do. This is one of the first kits I ever cell shaded, but you can see because I have variation in shadows, shapes, sizes, it came out very well in my opinion, despite it being one of my first kits successfully being cell shaded. Here's another example. On the MGX, I have shadows on there, but they're very thin, and they're very kind of subtle, you know. On the arms there's bigger ones, but when you look at it overall, it looks really nice. Now here's an exception to the rule, and this might not even be called cell shading, just detailing. Sometimes you don't even need shadows. One of my most popular kits on TikTok is this Zeta Gundam, and all it really has is lining on it, so sometimes you might not even want shadows on there.
But yeah guys, that was shadowing your gunpla. For the end of the video, I'm gonna go a little bit over tools and stuff and how they affect your shadows. So paintbrushes affect your shadows by being very like easy to control, but they take longer. So you're gonna be spending a lot of time on shadows if you use a paintbrush. You're gonna have to wait on drying times, on you know, multiple layers, everything. Paint pens are great because they dry fast and they apply a lot of paint all at once, but you lose a lot of control. So you won't be able to get those shapes that we talked about that make your piece unique. You'll also can't always get very sharp shadows. And then for those of you using them in combination, obviously you've heard the pros and cons of both, so use them as you see fit. But all right, join us for next video where we'll be talking about actually lining your kit. And then after that, color variation and blah, blah, yeah. Bye.